Morning, afternoon, evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are still getting the kinks out of our song. We have a new song we're using now. We didn't have any song at the beginning of the program a couple of weeks ago, and then one of our friends out there and one of the listeners of the program, support of the studio, gave us an original rendition of a song that he created, and we're using it uniquely here at allpointstv.com and the program called What's Going On that comes on at 2 o'clock at the studio every Monday without exception, starting exactly at 2 o'clock with John, the technician, standing at the door with a club. If I come in late, then we get hit on the head. So we got to be here on time. That's all in jest, folks. We are friendly. We are a friendly studio that we only club you after the program is over. So if you come in as a guest in the program and you don't do a good job, then as you walk out the door, we will hit you. You got to come in for excellence. I'm George Moss, host of the program, and we're here hopefully to bring you something new every Monday. We do hear the other alphabet soups out there, and they do a marvelous job of keeping you informed, and we try to bring something that's a little bit different. Otherwise, what is our purpose? If we can't do anything but what they are doing and repeat it. You know what they say, that imitation is flattery, but if we are the imitators, then that makes us admit at the outset that we are the second tier. So we try to be the first tier, not the second tier. And that means we've got to come together every year, every week of every year, every month, every time we come before you, and try to bring something just a little bit more in the purview of our listeners, and we try to be sure that we're not being repetitious here at the studio. And that's all the programs here, by the way, not just the program that I do, which is called What's Going On, but all the programs here at the studio. And we come in a couple of hours ahead of time, and we sit around and try to talk about what we're going to do. And we try to play off some of it before we get to the airwaves, because we know if we come in here doing less than our best, then we have even a higher mountain to climb, because there's so many different outlets out there. And I'm very glad they exist, by the way, because we need some alternatives. Do we need some alternatives today or not? Some alternatives in terms of what is happening in the media. And I don't know if I've ever seen anything like what we're seeing right now in the president campaign. It has gotten to the point where you can't believe anything that they're putting across the FCC airwaves. It's all slanted, and they intend to shut this insurgency down, because they understand the end result of it would be that there's going to be a toppling of business as usual, through which all of those persons who are the standard bearers of the status quo, benefit. And if they cannot shut this insurgent movement down that is headed by Donald Trump, but he's only the mouthpiece of it, the real insurgency is really that of the American people, who are tired of being dictated to by their political leadership and all the surrogates around it, in which maintain a status quo to which we don't benefit.
I'm going to ask you this question right off the bat. There's this issue about bringing more immigrants and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. American people seem not to have any kind of say in that matter, do they?
No.
And I don't know where that's given to the government to do a sole ownership of that, responsibility.
Yeah, the rulers are very careful in terms of putting out the facade that they give us a choice, and it wasn't known as much as it's known right now, given the campaign of Donald Trump, that the choices they give us really are just two different heads of the same body, owned by the same owners and rulers. And so the choices that they put out there, even those choices are controlled. And this idea of having a choice, your choices are to vote for come he and come her. I mean, that's a choice. And it's the Republican Party or the Democratic Party, and those parties, there's not even a penny worth of difference between the two of them. they're both going in the same direction, just they're going there to make it look like there's not a consensus of the destination that they're leading the country to. They go there at different speeds. One goes there at an accelerated speed, and then one goes at a slower speed, but the direction in which they're going, which can't be determined and discerned unless you pay attention to it, because if the speeds are different, it looks like the destination is different. But there is no difference in where they're leading this country. And we're all heading, they both are heading and leading this country toward the cliff. And we're going along for the ride, somewhat against our own permission, because they don't ask us to approve what they do. They asked us to go to the poll and vote them in as a way of legitimizing that if your voice is being used in terms of the placement, then how can you object to what they do once they get there?
Yeah, that's like, and they don't, I mean, did you ever write a letter to a congressman and senator, especially now in the era of emails? Basically, especially the guy, we have, I write him, and basically he comes back very polite, and he goes on, basically saying, screw you, I've already voted my way, it's nothing connected to yours, I don't believe, but it's politely worded.
Yeah, right.
It basically says, screw you,
Probably
I'm in
same
power,
letter.
and these guys paid me more than you're paying me.
Yeah.
Basically, that's what they're saying. So.
Yeah, and the ones that they're going to listen to are the ones that finance their campaigns. I don't know when they have the ones that are elected for 2 years never get a chance to govern. That's why they don't read legislation. What Pelosi was saying, that you have to you have to pass a bill in order to read it.
Well, it's like, aren't they supposed to be writing the damn thing? Excuse my expression, but yeah.
They're supposed to be, but do they have the ability to write anything? These people, we don't. People that run for office, quite frankly. 99% of them, you can never say 100% because, human nature doesn't move in perfect, order. There's always some exception to the rule. But 99%, or somewhere therein, of the people that run for political office do not have any skills that will be workable and serviceable in the private sector. They have to do things in the public order, in the public domain, because there's no accountability in that domain pretty much. How do you know that when you fail? Particularly, a lot of you can pass your failure off onto those who are paying for your failure, and it doesn't come out of your own pocket. So you don't have to really know a whole lot. And what you put out there as a way of working the political landscape doesn't have to work if you can, in fact, reach into the pockets of the taxpayers and make them pay for your mistakes. You see, we have the other side, the undertakers. The undertakers can bury their mistakes. And the politicians bury their mistakes by burying in the pockets of the taxpayers. And so, in a sense, they are the political undertakers, and what they're doing in terms of their undertakings, they're taking us under with their nonsense. And anybody at this late date that believes they're going to be the custodians of anything other than what they are, the custodians of confusion and political mockery and everything else that they're doing, we expecting anything different as a result of that, I can tell you what history says about it, and that is that there will be no different result, and nothing that has come out of the political order has ever benefited the societies. The main thing they benefit us from is when they stay out of the way. And this idea they're going to save us and make us safe and all, I hear these appeals, and I find it very sickening to have to listen to it, because history certainly nullifies all of that as a proposition, because none of that is real. But it testifies to the propaganda that the political class uses to make it appear that they are representing anybody's interests other than their own. The political class represents the political interest, and that was one of the fears that was what the founders were dealing with. They understood this very intuitively, and also understood it from an empirical standpoint, because these persons were, I keep quoting Ayn Rand on this, they were the nation's first intellectuals. And she says, and I agree with her, and so far, the last intellectuals. And they were prescient enough to understand that, government is, and I say, I'm writing this right now. I'm doing a piece right now on Facebook, and I'm putting together something about the propaganda of government. And I'm trying to think about it as I'm writing it, because I try to think a little bit away from the box that we all we're placed in, and we don't always understand that we're placed in a box, and our thinking comes out of that box we've been placed in. We used to play in a sandbox, then they let us play in the classroom, and that's an educational box, and we play in that for 12 years. By the time we come out of there, we're back in the sandbox again. Your head is buried in the sand. That's the beginning of it. And so anyway, I'm working on a piece right now, and I got it pretty much finished. And I'm writing it from the standpoint of Joseph Goebbels, who was the propaganda minister of the Nazis from 1933 to 1945. And I'm looking at his presuppositions of how you use propaganda, and where he was saying that you say something, if you say something loud enough, long enough, and often enough, then no matter how ridiculous it is, it will begin to resonate as if it is really true. And he was the Bible of that idea, and it was used by Goebbels, and they had it in place for 12 years before it was dismantled at the end of the process, when they found out that, of course, that was a oxymoron, that you can have Nazism and have reality exist in the same place at the same time. But all governments use it, and it is amazing to me when I hear people talking about politicians, and they are using that political construction, their construction of reality, as if that is real, and somehow they're going to resolve the problems, although they are the creators of the problem they're trying to resolve. I'm amazed by it, because I read the histories away from what they have given us in school, and I have these degrees. So I've been through all the processes that they put in front of students, and I went through that, and it just amazes me, based on my own research, away from the corridors of power, and that which is controlled by these government-run schools, that we still can have this belief that somehow those who are the occupiers of government, I mean, these people are occupiers. You may well vote them in there, but they really go out there and sell themselves around foolishness, and then they out propagandize their opponent, and then they use the custodialship, the people voting them in, and therefore thinking that they therefore control what they do once they arrive, as a way of getting away with, I wouldn't say murder, although murder is not beyond the pale if you've been paying attention. Some people are falling over like it's running out of style in some of these campaigns. And so I'm not going to say to get away with murder, although murder is not beyond the pale in some cases. They get away with a lot of stuff they shouldn't get away with if we had a representative government, as was intended by Article 4 of the United States Constitution, where we are guaranteed a Republican form of government. But it doesn't operate that way, and so you have these people that stand up in front of the public and offer them all kinds of things that belong to someone else, and it's looked at as benevolent on the part of the politicians, because people don't look in back of the benevolence to see what is really there, and what's in back of it is, of course, the theft of these politicians who are using the state to take other people's resources and then redistribute it, not to redistribute it, but to distribute it in the name of those who are handing out other people's stuff. And we don't see it as theft, but that's exactly what it is. I'm amazed by the propaganda, and that's why I'm writing a piece right now, and I'm going to finish it. I had to think about it for about a couple of, I've been thinking about this. It's going to take me about 2 hours to do it, because I'm thinking about it in some ways in which has not been thought about before, because I don't like to just repeat other people's ideas. I mean, I do have some ideas based on what I've been trained into, but I have my own mind, and I try to make some use of it so that I'm creating new knowledge out of what I've been taught. And I have to say, my training is very good. Not to brag, but I was well trained because I came along in school when there was another America existed, and they had not clamped down on the intellectual wherewithal of the society, because they had not put some of the final pieces in that would begin to control the population more, because we get more wiser and wiser than the controls. What you see in the society is that as the people become more and more informed, then you see the controls become to be magnified more and more in order to deal with that. And so a lot of people say, for example, that we're living in a different country than the one that we were born in. Yes, that's true, but let me tell you why that's true. It's true because you're smarter now than you were before. And because you're smarter and know more, then the clamps that government uses have to increase. And so It's like a it's like a maze, right? It's like a matrix. It's a catch-22. But don't ever think that the people that are creating this paradigm that we're living in, all living in a matrix, and we got to figure out, what the matrix looks like, in a given time period, and you have to figure out on your own that those who are putting this paradigm in place and creating it and maintaining it are not possibly going to be the ones that resolve it. Because if they were going to resolve it, why would they create it? And so that's not going to happen. And you can forget that as being anything other than problematical in terms of the very thought of it, because the ones who create the problem are not going to resolve the problems. Because if they did that, think about the contradiction of it. Think about the dialectics involved in it. If they were going to relieve you of the problem, then it makes no sense for them to invest time in the creation of the problem they're going to eventually resolve. They create the problem so the problems can exist in order to create relevance. Because, quite frankly, can we say this without anybody getting mad? I know they haven't said this on CNN. They're saying a lot over there. They're not saying this. And they're not saying it on the other stations either. In order to maintain, relevance. Now keep in mind, we're talking about to maintain relevance of people that are non-producers. Now, does that make any sense that a non-producer has maintained relevance? I mean, if you're not producing anything, can we all agree that if you're not producing anything and words are not production, we can all, we learn, after you get through with Dada and they give you a baby bottle and you keep on listening to adults talk, you learn how to speak. You're not going to manufacture, unless you can create some new words. I can respect that. But if you're just repeating the same words everybody else is using, then can we say that's not creative production? So if you're not producing anything, you are by virtue of that irrelevant. So the question becomes, how does a non-producer produce the idea of relevance when non-production is not relevant? How can I say this without you getting mad? How can producing nothing make a person relevant? Let me put it a different way. Let me put it into a name. How can people like Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton be relevant? I mean, give me a break. That's two persons, right? Give me two breaks. Because that's double irrelevance. But you see, you have to manufacture your relevance. And so those that are there to resolve problems have to create problems. Because in the absence of problems, there is no relevance. I think the best place I've ever read that somebody understood that was a comment made. Somebody wrote this and asked me about it on Facebook. And I publish on Facebook every day because I have to write the longest narrative. They always say to me, you write these books. I saw one of my former students in the store. She said, I read your posts all the time. She didn't say she agreed. But I read your posts all the time, and you be writing these books. I'm trying to get away from that, but when you sit at a word processor, you're out there, you're by yourself. You don't have the phone. When the phone stops ringing, and you don't have any. I can't write when I'm listening to anything. So everything, the radio is off, the TV is off, and don't have people hollering at me, and my dogs aren't barking. I sit there in the quietude of the moment, and I'm just trying to think of some ways of looking at it through a different prism. And but before I know it, I'm typing and I'm just kind of doing introductory things. And I look at it and I'm on page 3. So now I got to make the main point. I mean, that's another page, maybe another page and a half. So I have to try to cut down on it and keep my focus, because you go into a variety of areas and you're trying to fine tune it. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that I write on Facebook every day because I'm trying to say some things to the public, because I think we're on the wrong course in every dimension of the non-reality created for us, and we've got to have some conversations away from them, because until we are able to converse without going through what they have constructed, and we're able to go around that and talk to each other more directly, then we really cannot change the paradigm, because they own that part of it. We got to go around it because the part that they don't control is our way to go directly to each other. Now, let me say this about the person who understood this, Booker T. Washington. You know, people ask me about Booker T. Washington. One person asked me to write about Booker T. Washington, dispute between Booker T. Washington and W.B. Du Bois. I'm going to do that piece as soon as I get through writing about. Well, maybe I'll do it before that, but I need to spend a lot of time on this election because so many things are happening right now. Because they got to put this board, they got to nail this board down now. They got some things going out of control, and this insurgency that's being waged by the American people. They're trying to act like Donald Trump is leading it. That's not true. Donald Trump is a mouthpiece for it. There's an insurgency going on in this country, and they are beginning to rebel against the rulers. They're breaking out of the, those horses break out of the block. They ring, I don't know if a gun goes off in that case there, but they ring something, and then the gates open and horses start running. Well, the herd, it used to be a herd, right? We are the herd, H-E-R-D, of the society, and we've all broken out, and they didn't open up the gates, and we're running away from them, and they have not opened the gates up to say that's okay. So they got a problem here, and they got to nail these boys down real quick. And I think that so I'm going to do that. I'm going to spend some time. I got to spend some time on what's happening right now because we got to get this done. We got 2 more months before the election. We got September, October, and then the first weekend a day in November, because November's got to be the Tuesday's got to be the 1st of November, and then since the election is the first Tuesday after the first Monday, therefore there'll be the 8th of November this year. We got 2 months. A little bit, we got September, October, a little bit more than 2 months before the election. So I got to be on Facebook every day because we got a chance to do some great things here, and they recognize what time it is more so than we do. They understand what was happening here, and they're watching things very, very, very much, and they're watching with a great deal of panic. And I can see the panic because I see they got all cylinders out, bringing out all the guns. I don't mean necessarily, boom, boom, those guns. Although that can be used also, and it is being used in some cases where people are just simply falling off the earth that have some energy toward some things that are unpalatable to the status quo, and they're standing out there in the gap in very visible places. I'm a small fry, but there are some people that are bigger fries than I am, and that is the problem. And they're telling some of them to shut up, or else. And the or else in their case is the or else or no contracts. And that's just not my word for it. That's also what Alex Jones was saying this past weekend. If somebody on this program, somebody called him and asked him about why are these persons, mentioned names, I mentioned a couple of them, Glenn Beck and this pipsqueak that I've been criticizing, Mark Levine, who has shown himself to be another mouthpiece for the status quo, but he sounds like he's trying to argue against it. But they told him to shut up too, according to what Alex Jones was saying, in terms of if you want your contract renewed, you get off that wagon about Donald Trump, and you begin to say what you're supposed to say. I didn't, and these are not my facts here. This is, I'm just repeating and mouthpiecing what was said about Alex Jones. But I do take him at his word in saying it over the airways when he said that that they told Margolin, Glenn Beck, and some of the others, they couldn't do it to Rush Limbaugh, but they said it to some of the others, that if you want your contract renewed, you get off that bandwagon. And so all this propaganda out there that you're seeing is out there standing unaddressed, and that's why I try to be out there every day, because see, nobody controls me. And I mean, I don't depend upon them for my livelihood, so they don't control what I say, and I wouldn't tolerate it anyway, not knowing how I feel.
Nancy Pelosi, she's all outraged that people have to challenge their narrative. I mean, she's like, how dare somebody with a $5 website, blog site. It's like, well, it's cost more than that, Nancy. Of course, if you actually paid your own damn bills once in a while, you'd realize you're so out of touch with reality. You don't know what a computer costs, the internet service provider costs. You don't know anything. So shut up, And that's how out of touch with reality they are. She's made millions and millions of dollars, and she's attacking people who are challenging their narrative.
She's another one of those persons that has enriched herself at the public feeding trial, which they all do. I mean, they got 50% of the people in the Congress that are millionaires, and they're certainly not 50% smarter. They got 50 times the number of millionaires in Congress than is in the general population. 1% of the American people are millionaires or more, and 50% of the people in Congress are millionaires. Now, either they are 50 times smarter than we are, which there's no example, or there's something else going on here, which we can all figure out if we just think about it for about 2 seconds. But, I have to be out there because there is this, constant bombardment of non-reality. I mean, the matrix has to be propagandized every day, and they have to keep us in this box. And so I try to get out there every day to say something about whatever is current, to put some other images out there. And you may think that there are a lot of people out there that are doing that because they seem like they're a spokesperson against the status quo, but even the squawking against the status quo is part of maintaining the status quo.
Yeah, because you're only allowed to go so far.
You only go so far.
What you're allowed to assail is already scripted out, and you're not really scripted, but you get like. Well, another thing is too. Do you notice this whole thing with Donald Trump? And I have issues with the guy too. So, but anyway, he goes on and I've had liberals post on their Facebook page. If you're going to vote for him, might as well defriend me now. I mean, it's like, what are you going to do next? Hold your breath and to kick your feet and scream and wail on the floor? I mean, people are not going to agree with you. And if you don't want to own up to the fact that people, that's like William F. Buckley said. He said, the liberals always say they want to hear all from all viewpoints, and then they're actually surprised that there actually is other viewpoints. And it's true. They don't want to. I mean, I was talking to this woman through Facebook, and it was like she was addressing me through our mutual friend's Facebook page, and I was just like, basically, she posted this meme about, I said something about Hillary, and she goes, oh, the meme said, oh, girls have cooties, don't they? It's like, it's not about her being a woman, it's about her being a corrupt politician, a corrupt lawyer. That's what that angers me about. There's that narrative, like, oh, you just don't like her because you don't like Barack because he's black, you don't like Hillary because she's a woman. Mm-hmm. That's all you have to say is you don't like their program. You can even address that. And the liberals can enable you, because they're supposed to be specialists in it. They're supposed to be specialists in label. They're involved in these social sciences which tell you never to stereotype, pigeonhole, or categorize. But that's all those social sciences do, is label, categorize, and pigeonhole.
John, I agree with you 1,000% because there's evidence that is 100% true. They try to shut speech down by pretending to be open to speech. But what they're open to is the speech that they, in fact, monopolize from that side of the equation, and as long as you're talking from that side, they are for free speech. But any oppositional speech, they find a way to shut it down. I was listening to, I think it must have been Cokie Roberts, who was saying yesterday, was saying that when Donald Trump said that Hillary Clinton is doing things that are problematical. He didn't use those words, but just saying that what she's representative of is problematical. Then Cokie Roberts sees that as coded speech, that he doesn't think that a woman can be president of the United States. In other words, they leap from critiquing her, what I consider to be utter nonsense, and they make it so that any critique becomes sexism, because there's a male that is in fact critiquing what a female said. Now, a female can critique a male until the cows come home, but you can't do that in reverse. So he's at a disadvantage just for that reason. And they were going to use Elizabeth Warren, but she's such a kook that they had to get away from that. But they had intended to use her as a mouthpiece in the operation. Pocahontas and line that she did in order to get a job at Harvard University, making $700,000 for a class, because they wanted to bring her in as to fill their core quote minorities, and now she's a Native American.
I got 3 books on Rastafarianism. I'm just going to go grow out dreadlocks. I'm going to be spokesman for the Rastafarian movement.
Yeah.
How's that? Does that work? No.
Yeah, we get to all disguise ourselves because identity no longer means anything. Your identity is what you make it. The man thinking, so is he. So now, if you think you are, just think of anything you want to be, and then claim there's no status for it, representative in this diversity that we try to give in all corridors of society, claim that there's no representative of that, and that you are a representative of that, and then you get in because you are that person.
Well, I think I'm Warren Buffett. My bank account won't agree.
Lost that man.
I think I'm Warren Buffett. My bank account doesn't agree with me, but what does it know, right? I think I'm Warren Buffett.
Yeah, I've had a lot of dreams like that where I hit the lottery and I wake up still broke. Sometimes it doesn't work. But I guess when you put it in front of the right persons, and they are being politically correct and trying to entice you to be politically correct, they must do certain things in order to service that idea. But, we have to be out here in the public. And I'm going to do that piece. I guarantee I'll be doing that piece that you asked me to do on Booker T. Washington and W. Du Bois, and I will do that piece. But I got to stay out here right now with this focus, because this is the moment. This is the moment where we're either going to tell our children that we did that which was necessary to maintain that which was put in place by the framers, what they intended for us to have, do ordain this Constitution for ourselves and to our posterity, willing it down to generations yet to come, those that were born at that time and those who were unborn, those in this time period that are born and those that are not born, and continue to do it in perpetuity was the intent. And we're going to be able to this is the moment we're going to be able to tell our children whether or not we met the test that is placed in front of every generation. A challenge is given to every generation to rise to the occasion and maintain its custodianship of what's passed down to them by its predecessors, to which you have to pass it down to your descendants. And if we fail in that task there, then we are not worthy of the receivership. That's what it is. Every generation receiving and passing. It's offense and defense. And you inherit, the pass is from, it's like a pass, right? Football. And the pass is the thrown to you down the field, meaning down through time. And there you are receiving it through the continuum of time. And you are holding on to it in the present, and then you're tossing it into the future so that others can be custodians of it. And how well you do that job is going to determine what kind of custodian you were of it. And I am called to a higher level of it, knowing all of the prices that were paid in order to bring this moment about. That's why I'm on Facebook every day.
We're going to be done in because of a bunch of name calling. And basically, it's like grade school rules here. I mean, if you don't like this, you're a homophobe. You don't like this, you're a xenophobe. I mean, and another thing is to the word phobia, there you misapplied, or they're brought into they're beyond the original. Like phobia means an inordinate fear. Mm-hmm. Just because you oppose something doesn't mean you have a fear of it. I mean, you might, let's face it. I mean, there's a lot of things out there you don't fear. You just think are just not necessary, and you got to oppose it. But that's a phobia now. I mean, you're phobic. You're just basically saying you're neurotic, and the people who are labeling you this are usually more neurotic people than anybody else.
Yeah, everything is a phobia because they don't want any opposition to it, and so they create these blockers so that there will not be any continuum down the line through which they in fact have not sanctioned you go down that road. And any corridor that you open up that's not privy to the status quo, then they're going to call it something to stop it. I mean, one of the phobias that they want to claim for the society that has nothing to do with the society is racism. They keep throwing that out there. Everything is about race. Very little in the society is about race, and they can get out there and demonstrate all they want to. This idea that that all this that's going on between blacks, for example, in the police department, and I have the stats right here. I always bring my stats with me to the studio, and all these things they're presenting out there is just to shut down anyone that is going to come behind them and say that's not true. And those of us that are saying it's not true and saying it out there in the public, then you can expect, some things to come back at you. Anybody thinking you can be in the kitchen without the heat, you kind of, don't get it. You're gonna have to. You got to understand you're gonna get some opposition. You need to expect it. Ayn Rand made this comment about that. She said that, this idea that you should not. She said that a person should judge and expect in return to be judged. He goes with the territory. The idea you shouldn't judge. You should judge. I should not judge. You should judge. And you should judge all the time.
Liberals always take that out of context. They're saying, it says in the scripture, you judge not, lest ye be judged by the same standard you judge. Basically, they think the judgment of condemnation is what the Bible's saying not to judge. Don't say they're going to go to heaven or hell, because that's up to you to decide. Mm-hmm. But you're told to discern, discernment, judgment. If we don't have if we don't have the right to judge things, then why the hell we spend a lot of money on our court system? Another thing is they use judge. Okay, and the liberals
go to school.
And another thing is liberals say they don't judge anybody except if you oppose or have any kind of problem with what they say. Then you're not. Then they judge you. And they think they're fighting for just to be in the sole judge position. That's what they're fighting for. Yeah.
I became you become a better judge. When you're a poor judge. Whenever I was a poor judge of things, my back paid for it. I'm just like, I guess I'm like that Walter Williams in that case where he said that, he would tell his mother what he had on his mind, and then he said his mother would pull out the extension cord and she would tell him what was on her mind. What was on her mind, Trump was on his mind. He had to learn how to judge, the extent. And one of the things you judge is the extent to which you can do things without paying a price for it, to which the penalty comes back on you. And once you have to learn that, that's a judgment. And you better be a very good judge, because if you are not a good judge of it, others are going to be a better judge of it, and they're going to judge it. They're going to judge it so it's not in your favor. And so this idea of not judging, I judge all the time, and I expect to be judged in return. That's why, John, I agree with what you were saying earlier, because this idea that words are going to, in fact, hurt us. I keep asking this question all the time on Facebook. Whatever happened to this idea of sticks and stones will break my bones, but names will never hurt me? We used to hear that all the time.
I like the Facebook meme that shows guys storming the beach like in Normandy, and there were 17, 18-year-olds, and they said, these are the guys of the 40s. They're storming Normandy, and now there's a guy, kind of an emo guy, dark hair. Now he's got to have a safe place for people to criticize him. I mean, look how we degenerate
ridiculous.
Into. Yeah.
I look at this. I look at these things here, and see how this is being encouraged. Actually, it is almost being is regulated into existence. That's another creation of that matrix I was talking about earlier. Where you're creating a non-reality, where you got to have a safe space, because out here is all this reality, and they want to create a safe space to which they can avoid it, because they cannot deal with it, because it is outside of their control. You're not supposed to be able to be involved with anything that hurts your feelings, and anything that's politically incorrect. You got to have some safe zone to guard against that, because you only deal with the things you agree with. And this is what's happening on the university campuses, where it's supposed to be a university where you have a university of ideas.
Yeah, I just think it's bizarre that I was made fun of by teachers in class. Teachers in elementary, junior high, and high school. I used to be vilified by them. Teachers in class. And I'm supposed to respect these people, and I'm supposed to, but I mean, I had to just bear up with it. And who do you go report that to? Well, they hurt my feelings. They didn't care. Nowadays, oh my God. The thing is, only one side is cared about. If you have the opposing side, it's already determined who's going to be the right or who's in the wrong, and basically, you're on your own. And that's what it was when I was a kid going to school. I knew I was on my own, so crying about it or going to go seek authority. Well, that's who was doing it to me. So why should I bother going to seek authority? That's the reason why I'm not really good right-winger, because they have a tendency to be like, oh, it's a cop. You got to listen to what the cops say. Mm-hmm. You got to respect the cops. No, you have to comply. Respect means there's emotional connection. I know this jerk could probably kill me because he's got a gun and they're trained to do it. I don't respect cops. Sorry, I don't. Mm-hmm. That's the reason why I don't like to write, because it's the law. And that goes like, well, it's a law for Nazi Germany to kill Jews. Didn't make it right, did it? And that's what the right cannot understand. That sometimes things got to be opposed. Some things you got to say, no, I'm digging my feet in here. You're not digging. And that's what the right does not. And now it's being used against them. They refuse to dig in.
I make a critique on both sides. I don't have a position because it's on one of the two sides. Both need to be critiqued. And I get into those discussions on Facebook also. When you'll have a person that comes on, they'll say that the Democratic Party is this and the Republican Party is that, and they'll say that this party is right and that party is wrong, and I'll say they're both wrong. And that shuts down that then kills that conversation about it, because what can they say? I take ownership of that misstep on both sides, and I don't go over here because it's ideologically pure, or the other side because it's ideologically pure. Both are made human beings on both sides. And when they make a misstep, I don't care whether I like the person or not. If it's a misstep, I have to point that out. If I'm going to be honest with myself and be true to my values, I'm going to do that. And I only have one litmus test, and the litmus test that I have is not whether or not it is popular, but whether or not it's true. And as long as I think that I can show that it's true, I don't care if it's 10,000 angels dancing on the head of the pin of a needle. That is not going to change my mind about it. And all these persons that think that the noise makers and they're going to move you off the perch and they're going to move you because they disagree, they come on my wall with that stuff. They get nothing but more opposition, because that doesn't move me. And name calling only makes me stronger, because that what the name calling is from the Sticks and Stone school that I come from is that is just an evidence of the fact that cannot defeat your arguments. You get a lot of it out there in public, but I do it every day, and I dare them to come on the screen and say anything behind it, because I do know this. There are very few persons, I'm not bragging about this, but very, very few persons have my training. I came through school at a time when they actually were teaching in those schools.
The Oscar Wilde said it best. I think it was Oscar Wilde says, "Don't worry if your opponents make too much sense. You can always call them names." And that's exactly what the left is engaging in. And there should be the irony notice, because he was a homosexual at the time, wasn't, he was being persecuted for that. So the irony is not, can't be totally dismissed on those on the left, because that's all it is name calling.
Yeah.
They're screaming and name calling and stuff like that. It's like, you're like little petulant little children. I mean, that's all you are.
Yeah.
You are not making sense. You're babbling and screaming. You're crying. You're hating.
Yeah.
If you oppose something, you're a hater.
They're still in that sandbox.
I don't understand all that.
Yeah, they're still playing in that sandbox that they played in kindergarten. And what's that book called? The one by Evan Sayat. Yeah, it's called The Kindergarten. You know how you say the Garden of Eden? Evan, E-V-A-N, Sayat, S-A-Y-E-T. Evan Sayat has a book out called The Kindergarten of Eden. And, we're still playing in these little, kindergarten, these boxes. And there's never going to be a lot of discovery there, because the sandbox, if you notice, it's like, a square and got some sand, and outside of there's another thing. So that construction, I see college students doing, they're going back into that sandbox where the space is very limited, and therefore the amount of stimulus that you have to deal with is limited, because you only let so many people in that space. And I heard this. There was a case of it was this in Chicago, or where was this? Was it in Philadelphia or Cleveland? One of the things, I think it must have been in Philadelphia, where this black woman who was racist to the core was saying, we want to get people in line. All the black and brown people, you over here. The white people, you in the back. If I had been there, and I had been there with some blacks and browns, I don't like to be in the back, because I understand Rosa Parks a witness. But you know what I would have done in that case? I would have gotten behind everybody, because I don't play that. I would have called her on her racism right there to her face. That was racist to the core. But you think anybody's going to say anything about that? Has it been on CNN? Of course not.
And I talk to liberals about that. They say, well, they want to illustrate how bad it was for racism back in the 30s
And they
and
excuse
40s.
that.
And that's what they say. Well, look what happened. Look what happened. Like, the time when they were required to sit, blacks were required to sit in the back of buses and stuff. And okay, that was then. Now you're trying to persecute a group of people who weren't even alive then.
Tell me about
and then
it.
you're going to wonder why. Basically, they want people to grow up and feel like this hatred for themselves, and have to get permission from now this group that was from the persecuted minority, and now like almost every group that does that becomes very abusive of their power. Almost every group does.
Well, you see why I have to be on Facebook every day, because we have these kinds of things that have to be dealt with, and we have to have honesty. Right now, what's called for in America is, it's like what Edmund Burke said, right? And I don't know if he actually said it. I mean, I read where it is said that he made this comment, but there's some question about whether he said it or not. But this whole thing, they give credit to him for having said that all that has happened for evil to, in fact, prevail in the world is for enough good men, and I assume women as well, have to remain silent. Now, I don't know if Edmund Burke said it, but I do know the statement has some credence in terms of you have to shut down in order for it to prevail. A lie cannot live if there are enough people that are truthful, that's willing to stand the truth up next to it. Because the truth can't stand in the place of a lie, because it diametrically opposes. It diametrically opposes a lie. And a lie and the truth can't occupy the same space at the same time. But, so you're out there on Facebook every day because so much is going on that has to be challenged. You have to challenge it to be honest with it. And when you see what is racism out there and is being committed by blacks, and you don't point that out, to me, you lose all credibility. And I have yet to see Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton, two hobos as far as I'm concerned, two race hustlers. I consider those guys to be prostitutes.
Well, I don't see where they have legitimate careers, because Al Sharpton, when he stirred up that problem 20-some years ago, almost caused rioting and stuff up there by the false accusations of racist activity. It was in upstate New York. He could have got massive number of people killed. That was totally irresponsible. It's a heinous thing that he tried to do. He should never be able to speak on an open mic again and be heard, in my opinion, what he did. And yet he's considered this great, paragon of virtue, and let's face it, he's rears with millions of dollars to the IRS. Willie Nelson got everything taken from him for the same thing. Yet, where's this white privilege of Willie Nelson supposed to enjoy?
Right.
So I mean, to me, he's a shuckster. I don't know why he's even in the press. The press just gives them this new difference, because at one time he said something might have been relevant. Back in the 70s.
Yeah, I don't consider those guys anything other than what they are. They're race hustlers, and that goes back to what a little bit earlier comment I was trying to make at that time. And that was Booker T. Washington's comment in 1911. Booker T. Washington understood production because he was a builder. And, coming off of the plantation, I think he must have been like 7 years old when slavery came to a close. At the most, he was 9 years old if you take the date that he was born in 1856. If you take that date, and of course, the people wrestle with is it 1856 or is it 1857? So either 8 years old or 9 years old when slavery came to a close by law in 1865. He came off that plantation and was determined to get an education because it had been denied to him, and he was ferocious about learning to read and write and studying and things of that sort. And at the age of 26 was a builder. The man went down to Tuskegee, and there was a barn down there. They had given this person named Adams some land, and it was his getting an appropriation from the state legislature to build a school, but he wasn't able to do it, and Booker T. Washington came behind him and was able to construct an idea out of it, to which Tuskegee Institute got built, which still stands down there today. And Du Bois in building the thing, but he had words. He's a wordsmith, but he was a person that was actually putting mortar and bricks together and building a school, so that once he's gone, his the ones that his antecedents were slaves, but he was one that gave the descendants something that they didn't have to be slaves. They could be masters of their own fate. And he said in 1911, because he noticed that there was this dichotomy out there of those who were building and those that were in fact the wordsmiths, those who were using the condition as a way of making a living, as opposed to those who are actually doing things and constructing things out of production, creative production, that will cause wealth, because you're creating things that bring wealth to you. And he said there's a segment of the population among blacks who found out that they can make a living by pointing to the grievances of blacks in the society, and they do not want blacks to lose their grievances because they don't want to lose their jobs. Now, that was said in 1911, but in his most original speech, and the one that he gave that made him the leader that he became on the national level, I don't mean a black leader, but a leader in America. But he was black, so I guess you would say black leader in that sense. But I don't say black leaders because you have to then say, well, who are the white leaders? And there are no white leaders, and whites get miffed when you say they have leaders, because the question is why? Why would you have to have leaders when you can practice personal responsibility, when you're leading yourself through your own light? But anyway, the construction of black leaders. But before he even made that comment, Washington was saying in 1895. September the 18th, wasn't 1895, when Washington gave his Atlanta Compromise speech, and he said that we should not allow our grievances to blind us to our opportunities. So even at that point, and they had only been out of slavery 30 years at that point, and he was Booker T. Washington saying, don't let your grievances, which were up to the ceiling in some regards, and he's talking from Alabama, the heart of Dixie, the place where the Confederacy had been founded, and the later home of George Wallace and people of that sort, and Jim Clark, Bull Connor, and some of those persons, even as late as the 1960s. And he's saying this in 1895, do not let your grievances, as great as they may well be, blind you to your opportunities, as small as they may be at that particular point in time. And now people act like the grievances up here where they were in his day, and they can't do anything because they got the grievances up here where they're not. When the grievances are down here, and they've elevated the oppression up here in its place, and they responded to that which they imagine and act like they can't move. And that's because they're being stunned by people like Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton and others, who are stunning them into non-activity, believing that they're overwhelmed by conditions in their imagination, when it doesn't even exist anymore to the level that it existed. And when it did exist, it existed in the custodianship of the party that black people now identify with. Somebody ought to go see that film. Written that is put out. The book is also out, written by the same person that produced the film, Dinesh D'Souza, who did a national service. I don't know of anyone else that could have done that film, but D'Souza brings something very creative to it as a person that was not born, a person that's a second generation person that was here from his family, because I think I think he came here when he was like 11 years old. And so his perspective is a little bit different, coming out of a different cultural reference point that is not just grounded in the landscape of this country, but comes out of a couple of other settings as well. And that makes it somewhat different, and I think that's why that film is such a riveting, film. I think that's his third film, and each one has had a certain kind of nuance about it that you don't find in the films made by some other persons, particularly the films made by Michael Moore on the left, which are basically anti-intellectual and really just playing upon something that has no, it's not rudimented, it's not rooted in any factual claims, but most of the claims are emotional. But in D'Souza's films, he grounds it into a lot of the historical places, and then have you bringing this history out of the corners and bringing it out into public view and putting it on in a cinematic form. Those who can read the books for it as well and get more pleasure about it, probably, if you'd like to read. But he does it in a cinematic form for those who are not necessarily conversant in terms of reading it in a script form and coming away with an understanding what they're reading. So that it's a very good contribution, and those that need to go and see that the idea of the country being racist and all of that has no credence, because he's talking about the hidden history of the Democratic Party. And what they've done quite cleverly is to make it appear that the baggage they carry from the past into the present is not that baggage, but the baggage they put upon the whole society. And the society was in fact doing these things that basically were the custodialship of the Democratic Party. They made the whole society in fact practicing it, but that's not really true. Every slave owner in this country was of one political party. It wasn't the whole society, and it wasn't even the whole South. 17% at the most of the people in the South owned slaves. 83% of them at the least did not own slaves. And so this idea that it was even comprehensive in the South, Democratic South, that's not true. And then to have this spread throughout the societies, if the societies are somehow flawed more so than other societies are flawed, is nonsense. If that were the case, why are people coming to the West trying to find a respite from the oppression? Why are they fleeing to the place if the oppression is where they're running to? People don't move with their feet to go to where they're going to be more oppressed than where they are coming from. They flee as refugees from the oppression. And where are they all going? They're going into the West. They're trying to come into the United States. And that's people that are darker than any black folks in this country. They're coming here from other places in the world to escape it. And they're not coming here because it's worse than where they came from. They're coming to get away from where it was worse. And they're trying to go to where it is better. And when they get here, they try not to go back. Most of them you have to go and search them, hunt them down because they don't want to leave. And why is that true? Because the narrative we have in this country is wrong. And you have to be on Facebook. You can't be on there sporadically, every other day or every other week, once a month. Those kind. You have to be on there every day, because you have to refute the claims out there that are being put out there every day, because they're trying to see the environment to maintain the status quo, and we're trying to change it. And we got a great chance to do it because there's some things happening right now that are happening, and they happen once in a lifetime. And we have an opportunity now to, in fact, change the paradigm, that if we don't take advantage of it at this moment, this is the moment right now that we're going to tell our children that we either rose up to the occasion, we met the test and challenge head on with resolution to get the job done, or we're going to be able to tell our children that the test was in fact given to us and we failed to heed the warning of that test. We failed to rise to the occasion and meet the challenge head on, and the result is what you see right now, because we did not do our job. We were not good custodians of that which was passed down to us by our progenitors, and when they passed it down to us, we failed to rise to the occasion to meet the test. And when they did that, and when we did that, we had to sit in front of our children and say that we did not do our job. I was going to write this on Facebook. I didn't get a chance to do it yesterday, but I was going to write that. I love to talk about that conversation that, and I'll close off with this right here in the program today, and that is this comment made by the great Paul Robeson to a young Harry Belafonte. And Harry Belafonte was sitting with Paul Robeson because he, as an artist, wanted to know something about Paul Robeson's journey, because he met Paul Robeson when Paul Robeson was on his downward side, having been this great performer, internationally acclaimed vocalist and actor, and you name it. And he asked him, he said, Paul, you lost everything that you worked for. And now at the end of your career, you're not the person that you were because you paid a price for your principles and so on and so forth. And if you had to do it all over again, would you do it all over again? And Paul Robeson told him, as a young Harry Belafonte, he said, I would do it all over again. But there's one thing I did not know when I set out on this journey, and that is that I did not understand at that time that every generation that is in fact born into the world to take its rightful place as the custodians of the past, to pass it on to the future. What I did not know at the time is that every generation must rise up and save itself. In other words, and we're not saved because of Paul Robeson and Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and John F. Kennedy, and you name the other persons, and I have to name some women here too, and Sojourner and Rosa Parks and Ida B. Wells. You just name the persons, and Cody Stanton, and all the suffragettes and all of the ones who were custodians of, which Hillary Clinton is in fact beheading with her nonsense by not standing in the gap and fulfilling the promise that they had with her running the kind of criminal operation she's running. But everyone must in fact do their part. And this is our mission to do it right now. We have a job to do, and we have a chance to do it. Okay, I got to get out of here. Until next week, I want you to follow your dream. Because if you don't follow your dream, you'll never know what's on the other side of the rainbow.